Welcome back to Naptime Knowledge. Take a long, slow breath and let everything go. Let your body sink into wherever it rests tonight. Let the sounds of the day fade. Let the weight of everything you were carrying slowly dissolve, the way salt dissolves in warm water, completely, quietly, without effort. There is nothing left to do tonight. There is only this, the dark and your breath, and a story. Tonight's story is one of the oldest and strangest and most enduring mysteries in all of human culture. It is a story, about a tale told by a philosopher more than 2,000 years ago that has never been fully explained, never been definitively solved, and never, in all those centuries, lost its power to fascinate. It is the story of Atlantis, the legendary island civilization that supposedly sank beneath the waves in a single terrible day and night, taking with it an entire world of knowledge and beauty and power. Atlantis is one of those subjects that exists at the exact intersection of history and myth, of scholarly inquiry and pure imagination, of what we know and what we can never know. Serious archaeologists and historians engage with it. Poets and novelists have dreamed about it for centuries. Explorers have searched for it in the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea and the Caribbean and Antarctica, and beneath the sands of the Sahara. And none of them have found it. Or rather, none of them have found anything that everyone agrees is it. Though some of the things they have found along the way are extraordinary in their own right. This is a story for the edge of sleep, where the mind is loose enough to hold mystery without needing to resolve it. We will not solve the puzzle of Atlantis tonight, but we will explore it gently, carefully, from many angles, and in doing so, we will travel through ancient Greece and the Mediterranean world, through the history of archaeology and the philosophy of myth, through the ways that human beings reach for lost golden ages, when their own world feels uncertain. We will end, as all good bedtime stories should, somewhere very quiet and very dark, at the edge of a deep and peaceful ocean. Let the water rise around you. Let the mystery be comfortable rather than unsettling. The story of Atlantis is, in the end, a story about us, about what we lose and what we imagine we have lost, about the civilizations that vanish and the dreams they leave behind. And that is a story worth hearing, slowly in the dark, before sleep. Opening breathing meditation. But before we begin, find a comfortable position. Let your body settle. Feel the weight of your limbs. Feel the surface beneath you, holding you completely. Gently close your eyes, or let your gaze go soft. We are going to breathe together for just a few moments, slowly, deeply, and with each breath, you will feel yourself becoming a little more relaxed, a little heavier, a little more ready for rest. Take your first breath in, slowly. Feel your chest and belly rise. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. Good. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. Let your hands go soft. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. With this breath, let go of the day. Whatever happened today, whatever you carried, whatever you managed, whatever you left unfinished, you can set it down now. It will be there if you need it tomorrow. Tonight, it can rest. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. Notice how heavy your body feels. Notice how quiet the room is. Notice how the breath moves through you like a slow, dark tide. In and out, unhurried and easy. You do not need to do anything right now. You do not need to be anywhere. You do not need to solve anything, or remember anything, or prepare for anything. The only thing that exists right now is this breath, and this quiet, and the story that is about to begin. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. When you are ready, let your breathing return to its own natural rhythm. Let it be effortless. And as you breathe, let the words of the story carry you slowly, gently down toward sleep. Chapter 1. The Original Source. Plato and the Story He Told. Everything begins with Plato. This is the most important fact about Atlantis, and it is one that is frequently overlooked in the rush to speculate about sunken continents and ancient astronauts and lost technologies. Before Plato, there is no Atlantis. The story does not appear in any earlier Greek text, any Egyptian inscription, any Mesopotamian tablet, any source of any kind that predates the philosopher's own writings. Atlantis is Plato's story, first and last. And understanding it requires understanding who Plato was and what he was trying to do. Plato was born in Athens around 428 BCE into an aristocratic family with deep roots in the city's political life. He was a student of Socrates, whose execution by the Athenian democracy in 399 BCE had a profound and lasting effect on his thought. He founded the Academy, the first institution of higher learning in the Western world. He wrote philosophical dialogues, conversations between named characters, usually with Socrates as the central figure, that are among the most widely read and most influential texts in the history of philosophy. His ideas about the nature of reality, the structure of justice, the immortality of the soul, and the proper organization of society have shaped Western thought for 2,500 years. Atlantis appears in 2 of Plato's dialogues, written in approximately 360 BCE, the Timaeus and the Critias. In both dialogues, the story is presented not as a myth or a fable, but as a historical account, specifically as an account that the Athenian statesman Solon had brought back from Egypt, where Egyptian priests had shown him records of events 9,000 years in the past. Plato presents the story through a chain of transmission. The Egyptian priests told Solon. Solon told a man named Dropides. Dropides told his son Critias the elder. Critias the elder told his grandson Critias the younger. And Critias the younger tells the story in the dialogue. The Timaeus opens the account. Critias describes Atlantis as a great island empire that existed beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar, in the Atlantic Ocean, larger than Libya and Asia combined. 9,000 years before Plato's time, Athens and Atlantis had been the two great powers of the ancient world. Atlantis had attempted to conquer both Europe and Asia, but had been repulsed by the heroic Athenians, fighting alone after their allies had abandoned them. Shortly afterward, great earthquakes and floods had destroyed Atlantis in a single day and night, sinking the island beneath the ocean, and had also swallowed the Athenian warriors who had fought so bravely. The Critias goes into much greater detail about the nature of Atlantis itself, its geography, its political structure, its architecture, its customs, its people. This dialogue breaks off unfinished in the middle of a speech by Zeus to the assembled gods, and we do not know whether Plato intended to complete it or whether the ending is simply lost. What we have is enough to paint a vivid picture of the civilization Plato describes, and it is this picture that has haunted the human imagination ever since. The question of whether Plato intended Atlantis as a historical account or as a philosophical allegory has been debated since antiquity. Aristotle, Plato's most famous student, seems to have believed it was a fictional invention. He reportedly said that Plato created Atlantis and then destroyed it when he no longer needed it for his argument. Other ancient writers took it more literally. The debate has never been resolved, and perhaps it never can be, because the text itself is genuinely ambiguous in ways that allow both readings. What is certain is that Plato was not primarily interested in Atlantis as a geographical or historical fact. He was interested in it as a story, as a vehicle for exploring ideas about the nature of ideal civilization, the corrupting effects of wealth and power, the virtue of simplicity and military courage, and the cyclical nature of history. Whatever its origins, Atlantis served a philosophical purpose in his hands, and understanding that purpose is essential to understanding the story. Let the image of old Athens settle into your mind, the Acropolis rising above the city, the Aegean sparkling in the distance, a philosopher sitting with his students in the shade of an olive tree, telling a story about a civilization that sank beneath the sea. The story is about to begin. The water is very deep and very blue. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. Chapter 2. What Atlantis was said to be the Island Empire. Plato's description of Atlantis in the Critias dialogue is one of the most detailed and most evocative passages in all of ancient literature. It describes a civilization of extraordinary sophistication and beauty, built on a circular island of concentric rings of land and water, governed by a dynasty of divine kings descended from the god Poseidon himself. It is worth dwelling in this description for a while, because it is, whatever its ultimate status as fact or fiction, a remarkable piece of ancient imagination. The island of Atlantis, according to Plato, was situated in the Atlantic Ocean beyond the Pillars of Hercules. It was larger than Libya and Asia combined, by which Plato meant the portions of those continents known to the Greeks, which were considerably smaller than the entire continents. At the center of the island was a mountain, and at the center of the mountain lived Evenor, a mortal man, and his wife, Leucippe, and their daughter, Cleito. Poseidon fell in love with Cleito, and, to protect her and their children, surrounded the hill with alternating rings of sea and land, 2 rings of land and 3 of water, making it inaccessible from the outside. Poseidon provided everything the island needed. He brought up 2 springs from beneath the earth, one of warm water and one of cold. He caused the earth to produce food in abundance, and from his union with Cleito came 10 sons, 5 pairs of twins, who became the first kings of Atlantis. The eldest of the eldest pair was named Atlas, and from him the island and the surrounding ocean took their names. Atlas and his descendants ruled the greatest portion of the island, and their brothers ruled the other portions, and together they governed a confederation that extended not only across Atlantis itself, but to parts of the continent beyond the ocean, what we would call the Americas, and to regions of Europe and Africa. The capital city of Atlantis was built around the hill where Cleito had lived, surrounded by the concentric rings of land and water that Poseidon had created. The Atlanteans had connected the rings with canals and bridges, and they had built walls around each ring of land, the outermost wall covered in bronze, the middle wall coated in tin, the innermost wall gleaming with orichalcum, a metal that Plato describes as second in value only to gold and that shone with a reddish light. No one knows what orichalcum was. The word appears in other ancient texts, but always as something fabulous and precious, and its real-world referent, if any, is unknown. The city was beautiful beyond description. The temple to Poseidon at its center was a stadion in length, roughly 180 meters, and proportionately wide and tall, with an exterior of silver and pinnacles of gold. Inside, the ceiling was of ivory, decorated with gold, silver, and orichalcum. The statue of the god showed him standing in a chariot drawn by 6 winged horses, so tall that his head touched the ceiling. Around him were 100 Nereids riding dolphins. Outside the temple was a great golden statue of Cleito and Poseidon. The Atlanteans were extraordinary engineers. They quarried stone from beneath the island itself, white and black and red stone, and used it to build their palaces and harbors and bridges. They dug a great canal from the sea to the outermost ring of water, wide enough for the largest ships, and they built a harbor in the outermost ring that was always full of vessels and merchants from every part of the world. The city was rich with the produce of the island and the tribute of its subject peoples. The people of Atlantis were, in the beginning, virtuous. They were descended from the gods, and they retained something of the divine nature in their characters: wisdom, generosity, contempt for everything except virtue. They were moderate in their wealth, which was enormous. They were moderate in their power, which was vast. They were just rulers of their subject peoples and wise governors of themselves. But as the divine blood thinned over the generations, and as the mortal nature asserted itself more strongly, they began to change. Wealth corrupted them. Power corrupted them. They became greedy and ambitious, grasping for more territory, more gold, more dominion over others. They began to prize appearance over reality, to value seeming virtuous more than being virtuous. and it was in this corrupted state that they launched their great war of conquest against the peoples of Europe and the Mediterranean, the war that brought them into conflict with the heroic Athenians, and that ultimately brought them to the attention of Zeus. Zeus looked down at the once great people of Atlantis and saw what they had become. He called the gods together to decide what should be done. And at this point, at this crucial, dramatic moment, the Critias dialogue breaks off. The speech of Zeus is never delivered. The fate of Atlantis is left to what we know from the earlier account in the Timaeus: earthquakes and floods, a single terrible day and night, and then the ocean where the island had been, muddy and impossible, as if the sea itself were mourning something it had swallowed. Whatever Plato intended this story to mean, he told it beautifully. The image of the concentric rings of land and water, the gleaming walls of bronze and tin and orichalcum, the great temple with its golden statue of the god. These are images that have lived in the human imagination for 2,500 years. And the story of a civilization that had everything and lost it through its own pride and greed is a story that every generation recognizes as speaking to its own situation. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. Chapter 3. The World of Plato. Why this story? Why now? To understand why Plato told the story of Atlantis, you need to understand the world he was living in. A world that was, in many important ways, deeply troubled, and in which the questions Atlantis raises were far from abstract. Athens in the 4th century BCE was a city still recovering from the catastrophic Peloponnesian War, the decades-long conflict with Sparta and its allies that had ended in 404 BCE with the complete defeat of Athens, the dismantling of its empire, and the temporary abolition of its democracy. The war had exposed the dark side of Athenian imperial power, the arrogance with which Athens had treated its subject allies, the brutal military campaigns it had launched in Sicily and elsewhere, the ways in which the democracy had been manipulated by demagogues into catastrophic decisions. The execution of Socrates in 399 BCE, ordered by the restored democracy, had confirmed for Plato that democratic Athens was capable of the deepest injustice. The Critias dialogue, which contains the detailed description of Atlantis, was probably written late in Plato's career, when he was in his 60s or 70s, after his own failed attempts to influence the politics of Syracuse in Sicily, experiments in philosopher kingship that had ended badly and that had left him deeply pessimistic about the possibility of reforming actual political systems. Against this background, the story of Atlantis takes on a very specific resonance. The Atlanteans in Plato's account begin as a virtuous people, simple, courageous, uncorrupted by wealth, and are destroyed by the gradual corruption that wealth and power bring. The Athenians who resist them are described in terms that evoke the simple, military, aristocratic virtues that Plato associated with the Athens of an earlier and better time. The war between Athens and Atlantis is, in this reading, a moral allegory about the conflict between virtue and corruption, simplicity and luxury, the genuine and the merely apparent. It is also perhaps a commentary on Athens's own imperial history. 5th century Athens had been, in many ways, an Atlantis, a powerful, wealthy, sophisticated civilization that had overreached, attempted to dominate the entire Greek world, and been destroyed by its own hubris. Plato may have been writing the history of Athens's downfall in the form of a myth about a sunken island, at a safe enough remove from the present to allow the lesson to be heard without causing offense. Or he may have been doing something more philosophically ambitious, exploring the nature of the ideal city, the perfect civilization, and showing how even the most gifted and divinely descended people are vulnerable to the corruption of material success. In the Republic, Plato had described the ideal city in positive terms, what it should be. In the Timaeus and Critias, he may have been describing the ideal city in negative terms, what it becomes when it fails to live up to its potential. None of this rules out the possibility that there was a historical kernel to the story, a real civilization, a real catastrophe, dimly remembered through centuries of oral tradition and transformed by Plato's philosophical imagination into the story he tells. But it does remind us that the story was not told primarily as history. It was told as philosophy, as a meditation on the nature of civilization, the dangers of power, and the eternal human struggle between virtue and corruption. These themes haven't dated. They speak as directly to the 21st century as they spoke to 4th century Athens. Perhaps that is why the story of Atlantis has never lost its hold on the human imagination. Not because people believe in a sunken island, though many do, but because the story it tells about what civilizations do to themselves is true, recognizably and painfully true, in every era. Breathe slowly. Let Plato's question settle into you like something heavy and quiet, sinking through deep water. What do we lose when we choose wealth over virtue, appearance over reality, power over wisdom? What does it cost? And what does it look like from the bottom of the sea, looking up? Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. Chapter 4. Ancient Reactions. Was Atlantis believed? From the moment Plato published his dialogues, people argued about Atlantis. This is one of the most remarkable things about the story, that the debate it has generated is nearly as old as the story itself, and that the range of positions taken in antiquity is strikingly similar to the range of positions taken today. Aristotle, who had studied at Plato's academy for 20 years and knew his teacher's work with extraordinary intimacy, appears to have regarded Atlantis as a fictional invention. The ancient biographer Strabo reports that Aristotle compared Plato's invention and destruction of Atlantis to the trick used by Homer, who gave his hero Odysseus a raft at the end of his journey, and then sank the raft so that Odysseus had no way of returning to the fantasy world he had inhabited, the author destroying his own creation because he no longer needed it. This comparison strongly implies that Aristotle thought Atlantis was invented for philosophical purposes and then disposed of in the same spirit. Other ancient writers took a more literal view. The philosopher Crantor, who wrote the first known commentary on Plato's Timaeus, reportedly believed the story was historical and claimed that Solon's Egyptian sources had been confirmed by inscribed columns he had seen in Egypt. This claim is impossible to verify. No such columns have ever been found. But it establishes that within a generation of Plato's death, there were already people arguing for the literal historicity of Atlantis. The Greek geographer Strabo, writing in the 1st century BCE, took a nuanced position. He noted that some people had taken Plato's account literally and tried to identify the location of Atlantis, while others regarded it as pure invention. He himself seemed to lean toward the latter view, but he acknowledged the uncertainty. The geographer and historian Diodorus Siculus, writing around the same time, included a detailed account of a legendary Atlantic island empire in his Universal History, though his account differs significantly from Plato's in ways that suggest he was drawing on different sources or traditions. The philosopher Proclus, writing in the 5th century CE, tried to reconcile the various ancient accounts and argued for the literal truth of the Atlantis story, citing various ancient authors who had allegedly confirmed its historicity. His efforts are somewhat circular. Many of his sources are themselves drawing on Plato, but they demonstrate the persistence of the literal interpretation across nearly 1,000 years of ancient and late antique thought. What is striking about all of these ancient reactions is how modern they feel. The same arguments that were being made in Athens and Alexandria 2,000 years ago are being made in books and documentaries and internet forums today. Was Plato reporting history or inventing myth? If history, where did his information come from? If the information came from Egypt, as he claimed, where are the Egyptian records? Is the story too convenient, too perfectly shaped to Plato's philosophical purposes, to be genuine history? Or does its very specificity, the detailed measurements, the named individuals, the precise geography, suggest a real source behind it? These questions have no definitive answers, but they are fascinating questions, and the fact that they have been asked continuously for 2,500 years is itself a kind of answer. An answer about the enduring power of stories that sit exactly at the border between history and myth, between what we know and what we can only imagine. There is something philosophically interesting about the fact that the Atlantis debate is as old as the story itself. From the very beginning, from the generation immediately after Plato, people were divided about whether to take the story literally or allegorically. This division has never been resolved, and it seems increasingly unlikely that it ever will be, because the story was designed, whether consciously or not, to resist resolution. It is specific enough to invite literal interpretation, but not specific enough to be confirmed. It is philosophical enough to read as allegory, but not obviously allegorical enough to rule out literal truth. It sits in the productive middle ground between fact and fiction, and it is in that middle ground that it does its best work. The debate itself is part of the story's meaning. Every generation that argues about Atlantis is performing the act that Plato wanted, thinking seriously about the relationship between civilization and virtue, about what makes a society great and what makes it fail, about the fragility of human achievement and the permanence of the ocean. The argument is the lesson, as much as any conclusion it might ever reach. Let the ancient arguments drift through your mind, like boats on a slow current. Aristotle says it is fiction. Crantor says it is history. Strabo is unsure. Proclus argues both sides. 2,000 years of scholars and dreamers and explorers, all reaching for the same submerged truth, none of them quite touching it. The ocean keeps its secrets. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. Chapter 5. The Search Begins. Medieval and Renaissance Atlantis. For much of the medieval period in Europe, Atlantis was not a major preoccupation. The intellectual life of medieval Europe was centered on Christian theology and the recovery of classical learning, and Plato's dialogues, including the Timaeus and Critias, were not widely read in the Latin West until the Renaissance. When Platonic texts began circulating more widely in the 15th century, Atlantis came with them. The discovery of the Americas in 1492 gave the Atlantis story an entirely new dimension and a new urgency. Here, suddenly, was a vast landmass on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, a continent that the ancient Greeks had known nothing about. Could this be Atlantis? Or could it be the continent beyond Atlantis that Plato had mentioned? The great landmass that lay on the other side of the legendary island. The coincidence of location seemed almost too perfect to ignore. Francis Bacon, the English philosopher and statesman, used the Atlantis myth explicitly in his utopian work, New Atlantis, published posthumously in 1627. Bacon's New Atlantis was not a literal recovery of the lost civilization, but a vision of what an ideal civilization, based on scientific inquiry, might look like. He placed it in the Pacific rather than the Atlantic, and populated it with a society organized around the systematic pursuit of natural knowledge. The work is effectively a blueprint for what would become the Royal Society, founded in 1660, one of the world's first scientific institutions. In Bacon's hands, Atlantis became not a lost paradise to be mourned, but a future paradise to be built through the power of reason and inquiry. The Swedish scholar Olof Rudbeck published, between 1679 and 1702, a monumental 4-volume work arguing that Atlantis was Sweden. He identified the city of Uppsala as the capital of Atlantis, argued that the ancient Swedes were the ancestors of all civilization, and constructed an elaborate edifice of linguistic and geographical arguments in support of his thesis. The work is a remarkable example of nationalist myth-making in scholarly dress. Sweden had recently emerged as a major European power in the 30 Years' War, and Rudbeck's identification of Atlantis with Sweden served the ideological purpose of giving this new power an ancient and glorious pedigree. Rudbeck's work was laughed at by many of his contemporaries and has been largely forgotten, but it established a pattern that would be repeated many times over the following centuries. The identification of Atlantis with a specific nation or region whose advocates wanted to claim an ancient and distinguished ancestry. Atlantis has been located in almost every part of the world by enthusiasts eager to claim its heritage for their own people. The 19th century saw a major new development in Atlantis studies with the publication in 1882 of a book called Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, by an American politician and writer named Ignatius Donnelly. Donnelly argued at enormous length and with considerable passion that Atlantis had been a real civilization, the original source of all the world's great ancient cultures, from Egypt to Mesoamerica to India. He claimed that the flood myths found in cultures around the world were all memories of the sinking of Atlantis, that the similarities between the pyramids of Egypt and those of Mexico were evidence of their common Atlantean origin, and that the plants and animals found on both sides of the Atlantic testified to a land connection between them that had been Atlantis. Donnelly's book was enormously popular and went through dozens of editions. It is in many ways the founding document of the modern Atlantis obsession, the work that established the template of the argument that has been repeated in increasingly elaborate forms ever since. His evidence was largely specious. The similarities between Egyptian and Mexican pyramids are superficial, and the shared flood myths reflect universal human experiences of catastrophic flooding rather than memory of a specific event. But his passion and his confidence carried readers along, and the questions he raised have never entirely gone away. The ocean is very deep. The light fades quickly below the surface. Blue first, then darker blue, then green, then black. At the bottom, it looks cold and the dark. There is more unknown than known. Whatever is down there has been there for a very long time, patient as geology, indifferent to all the stories told about it in the world above. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Release, 2, 3, 4. Chapter 6. The Santorini Theory. Fire, Ash, and the Minoan World. Of all the serious scholarly theories about the historical origins of the Atlantis myth, the most compelling and the most widely discussed connects the legend to one of the greatest volcanic catastrophes in recorded human history, the eruption of the volcano on the island of Thera, modern Santorini, sometime around 1600 BCE, give or take a century. The Thera eruption was, by any measure, an event of extraordinary violence. It ejected an estimated 60 cubic kilometers of material into the atmosphere, making it one of the largest volcanic eruptions of the past 10,000 years. The explosion created a caldera, a collapsed crater, several kilometers across, now filled with the sea and visible today as the spectacular bay around which the modern island of Santorini is arranged. The eruption sent tsunamis across the eastern Mediterranean. It deposited a thick layer of volcanic ash over the island itself and over a wide area of the surrounding sea and the nearest coasts. On the island of Thera, at the time of the eruption, there lived a prosperous and sophisticated Bronze Age civilization, a settlement at the site now called Akrotiri that was clearly part of, or closely connected to, the Minoan civilization centered on the island of Crete. Akrotiri was a substantial town with multi-story buildings, sophisticated drainage systems, and walls decorated with frescoes of extraordinary beauty. Images of swallows and spring flowers, of young fishermen carrying their catch, of ships processing through a harbour town, of women gathering saffron. It was a comfortable, prosperous, artistically accomplished place. The town was buried under meters of volcanic ash when Thera erupted, preserving it much as Vesuvius would later preserve Pompeii, frozen in time at the moment of its destruction. Excavations that began in the late 1960s and have continued ever since have revealed a site of remarkable completeness, with pottery and furniture and architectural details intact under the ash. Unlike Pompeii, no bodies have been found. The inhabitants apparently had enough warning to evacuate before the worst of the eruption. The connection to Atlantis was first proposed by the Greek archaeologist Spyridon Marinatos in the 1930s, though his argument was then focused on the possible connection between the eruption and the collapse of Minoan civilization on Crete. Later scholars developed the Atlantis connection more explicitly. The argument runs roughly as follows. The Thera eruption was a catastrophic volcanic event that destroyed a major Bronze Age settlement and sent tsunamis across the eastern Mediterranean. If memory of this event reached Egypt, and there is some evidence that it did in the form of Egyptian papyri describing extraordinary natural disturbances, then Egyptian priests might have preserved an account of a great island civilization destroyed by catastrophic natural forces. When Solon visited Egypt, he might have heard this account and brought it back to Greece, where it eventually reached Plato. Plato's account does not match the geography of the Aegean precisely. Thera is in the Mediterranean, not beyond the Pillars of Hercules, and it is much smaller than Atlantis as described. But defenders of the theory argue that Plato, or his sources, may have confused or exaggerated the original account, and that the 9,000 years Plato gives for the time before the destruction might be a garbling of 900 years, which would put the events in roughly the right period for the Bronze Age Aegean. The Minoan civilization itself is fascinating in its own right, and deserves attention as a candidate for the historical inspiration, if not the literal model, for Atlantis. The Minoans were the dominant maritime civilization of the Bronze Age Aegean, a sophisticated, literate, apparently peaceful culture centered on the island of Crete, with palace complexes of extraordinary architectural sophistication at Knossos and Phaistos and Akrotiri. Their art is among the most charming of the ancient world, fluid, naturalistic, full of dolphins and octopuses and acrobats leaping over bulls, expressing a delight in the physical world that feels entirely modern. The Minoan civilization declined sharply around 1450 BCE, whether as a direct result of the Thera eruption or of a subsequent Mycenaean Greek conquest of Crete, or of some combination of factors, is still debated. But the decline was real and relatively sudden, and it left behind a civilization that was, in important ways, lost. Its script still undeciphered, its language unknown, its religion only partially understood. In this sense, the Minoans are a genuinely mysterious, lost civilization, and their connection to the Atlantis story, whether direct or indirect, has a certain poetic rightness to it. The island of Santorini today is one of the most beautiful places in the Aegean. Its white and blue buildings clinging to the rim of the ancient caldera, the deep blue water of the bay below, the distant profile of the volcanic islands at the center. Standing on the edge of the caldera, looking down into the water that fills the ancient explosion crater, it is possible to feel something of the immensity of what happened there 3,500 years ago. The mountain blew itself apart, the sea rushed in, and somewhere is a memory of that catastrophe. The story of Atlantis may have begun. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. Chapter 7. The Atlantic and Beyond. Other Theories and Other Oceans. The Santorini theory is the most scientifically respectable of the Atlantis hypotheses, but it is far from the only one. Over the centuries, Atlantis has been placed in almost every body of water and on almost every continent on Earth. And some of the theories, while ultimately unsupported by evidence, are interesting windows into the preoccupations and anxieties of the eras that produced them. The Atlantic Ocean itself, the ocean that took its name from the myth, has been the most popular candidate for the location of the sunken island. This is the most literal reading of Plato's text, which does say explicitly that Atlantis lay beyond the Pillars of Hercules in the Atlantic. For those who take Plato's geography at face value, the Atlantic is the obvious place to look. The problem is that the Atlantic Ocean has been thoroughly mapped and sounded, and there is no submerged continent there. The ocean floor has been extensively studied by oceanographic surveys, and what it shows is consistent with what geology predicts. Mid-ocean ridges where new sea floor is being created, deep abyssal plains, seamounts and submarine volcanoes, but nothing remotely resembling the remains of a large, sunken landmass. The idea of a continent-sized island sinking into the Atlantic in a single day and night is, from a geological standpoint, essentially impossible. The processes that cause continental landmasses to subside beneath the ocean operate over millions of years, not overnight. This geological reality has not stopped the search. The Azores Archipelago, a group of volcanic islands in the mid-Atlantic, has been a popular candidate, partly because the islands are the visible peaks of the mid-Atlantic ridge, and partly because some 19th century theorists identified them as the mountain tops of sunken Atlantis. More recently, various sonar anomalies and underwater formations in the waters around the Azores, the Canary Islands, and the Bahamas have been claimed as evidence of submerged structures, claims that have invariably been explained by geologists as natural formations. The Bahamas produced one of the most discussed of these claims, the Bimini Road, a formation of flat limestone blocks on the seafloor off the coast of North Bimini, discovered in 1968. Proponents of an Atlantis connection argued that the irregular, pavement-like arrangement of the blocks was evidence of an ancient human construction. Geologists who studied the formation concluded that it was a natural beach rock formation, limestone that had formed from beach sand and then been broken and rearranged by natural processes into its current configuration. The debate was never entirely settled to everyone's satisfaction, and the Bimini Road remains a minor cause célèbre in Atlantis literature. Antarctica has attracted serious attention, as an Atlantis candidate, particularly following the publication of Charles Hapgood's 1958 book, Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, which argued that certain medieval and Renaissance maps showed Antarctica without its ice cover. Evidence, Hapgood claimed, that some ancient civilization had mapped the continent before it was covered by ice. The theory is not supported by the geological evidence for Antarctic glaciation, which shows that the continent has been substantially ice-covered for millions of years. But it has inspired a small industry of books and documentaries arguing that Antarctica was Atlantis, and that the civilization there was buried under ice rather than sunk beneath the sea. In the Americas, various pre-Columbian civilizations have been identified as the descendants or the remnants of Atlantis, most notably the Maya and the Aztec, whose sophisticated astronomical knowledge and monumental architecture seemed to 19th century writers like Donnelly inexplicable without an ancient and advanced ancestor civilization. This argument depends on a fundamental underestimation of indigenous American civilizations, on the assumption that they couldn't have developed their sophisticated cultures independently without an old world source. Modern archaeology has thoroughly refuted this assumption, demonstrating the independent development of Mesoamerican civilization from its own indigenous roots. The Black Sea has also attracted attention, particularly following the publication in 2000 of a book by the oceanographers William Ryan and Walter Pittman, arguing that the Black Sea had been dramatically and rapidly flooded around 5600 BCE, when the rising waters of the Mediterranean broke through what is now the Bosphorus Strait and poured into a previously freshwater lake. This flood, Ryan and Pittman argued, was the historical basis for the flood myths of many Near Eastern cultures, including, perhaps, the story of Noah. Whether it was also the basis for Atlantis is a further speculation, but the connection has been made by various writers. All of these theories share a common structure. They take a real historical event or geological feature and argue that it might be the basis for Plato's story. They are not all equally well supported, and none of them has achieved anything like scientific consensus. But they are, taken together, a remarkable record of human ingenuity and the irresistible desire to solve an ancient mystery, to find the real thing behind the story, to prove that the past was as dramatic and as extraordinary as our imaginations have always suggested it was. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. Chapter 8. What archaeology tells us. Reading the Earth's memory. While the search for Atlantis has often been conducted at the fringes of respectable scholarship, mainstream archaeology has made its own contributions to the question, not by finding Atlantis, but by finding the real ancient civilizations that may have inspired it, and by giving us a much richer understanding of the Bronze Age world, in which the Atlantis story ultimately has its roots. The archaeology of the Bronze Age Aegean has been one of the most exciting fields of scholarship of the past century and a half. Heinrich Schliemann's discovery of Troy in 1870 using Homer's Iliad as his guide, against the skepticism of most academics of his day, demonstrated that ancient myths could contain genuine historical memories, however transformed by centuries of oral transmission. His subsequent excavations at Mycenae revealed the gold-rich civilization that had been the dominant power of the mainland Aegean in the Bronze Age. Arthur Evans's excavations at Knossos in Crete, beginning in 1900, revealed the extraordinary Minoan civilization. The palace complex, with its labyrinthine plan that may be the origin of the myth of the labyrinth and the Minotaur. The Archaeology of Akrotiri on Santorini, excavated since the 1960s by the Greek archaeologist Spiridon Marinatos and his successors, has given us the most vivid picture of a Bronze Age Aegean town that we have. Frozen at the moment of the Thera eruption, its frescoes and its pottery and its architectural details preserved under meters of volcanic ash. The frescoes of Akrotiri are among the most beautiful surviving images from the ancient world. The Blue Monkeys fresco, the Spring fresco with its swallows and lilies, the miniature frieze showing a detailed landscape with towns and ships and soldiers. The study of the Thera eruption itself has been refined significantly in recent decades. Ice core records from Greenland and Antarctica, which preserve layers of volcanic ash and sulfuric acid from ancient eruptions, have helped to establish the date of the eruption more precisely. Tree ring records from ancient timbers in various parts of the world show evidence of a major climatological disturbance in the mid-2nd millennium BCE that is consistent with the atmospheric effects of a very large volcanic eruption. Egyptian papyri from the same period describe extraordinary natural disturbances, darkness, strange weather, the Nile running with a different color, that some scholars have connected to the Thera eruption. The Linear B tablets, clay tablets inscribed with an early form of Greek writing that was used by the Mycenaean civilization, have been deciphered since 1952, when the British architect Michael Ventris cracked the code. They reveal the administrative details of Mycenaean palace economies, livestock counts, grain allocations, lists of officials and their rations. They do not mention Atlantis, or anything obviously connected to it, but they give us a vivid picture of the Bronze Age world in which the historical kernel of the Atlantis story, if there is one, would have existed. Linear A, the undeciphered script of the Minoan civilization, remains one of the great outstanding puzzles of ancient history. It is clearly related to Linear B in its visual form, but the underlying language is completely different and completely unknown. No bilingual text like the Rosetta Stone has been found for Linear A. The Minoans' own account of themselves, in their own language, remains locked in a script that no living person can read. This adds a layer of genuine mystery to the Minoan civilization that no amount of archaeological work can currently resolve. They are, in this precise sense, a lost civilization, their voices silenced by the failure of their script to survive into a form we can decode. The archaeology of the ancient Near East has added another dimension to the Atlantis discussion. Excavations at sites across Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Levant have found evidence of catastrophic floods and civilizational disruptions in the Bronze Age, the general period from which the Atlantis story, if it has a historical kernel, would derive. the widespread evidence of a Bronze Age collapse around 1200 BCE, a mysterious and catastrophic disruption that brought down multiple civilizations across the eastern Mediterranean simultaneously, leaving a gap in the archaeological record and a dark age of several centuries, suggests that the ancient world was more fragile and more subject to sudden catastrophe than the gleaming monuments of Egypt and Greece might suggest. None of this confirms Atlantis. None of it proves that a specific civilization in a specific location sank beneath the sea in a single day and night. But it does confirm that the ancient world was full of catastrophes, that civilizations did collapse with a suddenness that must have seemed almost supernatural to those who survived them, and that the human impulse to explain those catastrophes through stories of divine punishment and lost golden ages is as old as civilization itself. Rest in the thought of the archaeologist's trowel, moving carefully through layers of soil and ash and broken pottery, reading the Earth's memory 1 centimeter at a time. The past is there, just below the surface. We have not finished reading it yet. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. Chapter 5. The War, the Hubris, and the Sinking, Plato's Moral Drama. The story Plato tells about the fall of Atlantis is not merely a natural disaster story. It is a moral drama, a careful account of how a civilization that began in virtue descended into corruption, and how that corruption brought about its destruction. Understanding this moral arc is essential to understanding what Plato was doing with the story, and why it has resonated so deeply across so many centuries. In the beginning, according to Plato, the Atlanteans were a people of extraordinary virtue. They were, he writes, obedient to the laws, gentle, and well-disposed towards the gods who were their kindred. They had contempt for everything but virtue. They thought lightly of the possession of gold and other property, and they were not intoxicated by the luxury of their wealth. They were sober and moderate, with the wisdom to see that all things increase with mutual friendship combined with virtue, but decrease when the desire for money or power overwhelms virtue. This description of early Atlantean virtue is a perfect expression of what Plato considered the ideal character, a combination of wisdom, moderation, courage, and justice, the 4 cardinal virtues of his ethical philosophy. The Atlanteans had these virtues in abundance, and as long as they had them, they prospered in the right way, not through greed or conquest, but through the natural abundance of their divinely blessed island and the fair governance of their divine descended kings. But as the divine blood thinned over the generations, and as the mortal nature became dominant over the divine, the Atlanteans changed. They began to value wealth for its own sake. They began to use their power for domination rather than stewardship. They began to treat their subjects not as people in their care, but as resources to be exploited. And gradually, the virtue that had made them great was replaced by its opposite, by the greed and the arrogance and the hunger for dominance that Plato associated with the corrupted soul and the corrupted city. It was in this corrupted state that the Atlanteans launched their great war of conquest. They set out to conquer Europe and Asia, the entire known world, subjugating people not for any legitimate purpose, but simply because they had the power to do so, and because their corrupted natures now equated power with virtue and domination with greatness. They swept through North Africa and the Mediterranean, and it seemed that nothing could stop them. And then they met the Athenians. Plato's Athenians of this legendary era are everything the Atlanteans had ceased to be. Simple, courageous, uncorrupted by wealth, motivated by genuine virtue rather than the appearance of it. They fought alone after their allies had abandoned them against an overwhelming force, and they won. They drove the Atlanteans back, liberated the peoples the Atlanteans had conquered, and refused to take any advantage for themselves. They fought for justice, not for gain. This is a remarkably idealized portrait of ancient Athens, and it is clearly intended as a contrast, even a rebuke, to the actual Athens of the 5th century BCE, which had used its naval power to build an empire, had treated its allies with increasing arrogance, and had launched disastrous campaigns of conquest in Sicily that had ended in catastrophe. Plato is writing a kind of moral history, not what Athens actually was, but what Athens should have been, set against the negative example of what Atlantis had become. After the Athenian victory, both civilizations were destroyed by natural disaster. The Athenian warriors were swallowed by the earth. Atlantis was swallowed by the sea. In a single day and night of extraordinary violence, earthquakes and floods of unprecedented severity, the island sank beneath the ocean, leaving behind only muddy, impassable shallows where it had been. The sea closed over Atlantis as completely as the past closes over the civilizations that fail to live up to their own best possibilities. The sinking of Atlantis is the most dramatic element of the story, and it is the element that has most captured the popular imagination. But in Plato's philosophical framework, the sinking is not the point, it is the consequence. The point is the moral failure that preceded it. The sinking is Zeus's response to a civilization that had forgotten its divine origins and its divine responsibilities. It is the universe's answer to hubris, to the overreaching pride that the Greeks considered the most dangerous of all human qualities. Hubris in the Greek understanding was not merely arrogance, it was a specific kind of transgression, the attempt to place oneself above the natural order, to claim for oneself the status and the privileges of the divine, to treat other human beings as instruments rather than ends. The Atlanteans had done all of this. They had inherited divine blood and divine gifts, and they had used them not to serve the order of things, but to dominate it. And the order of things, represented by Zeus and the assembled gods, had responded accordingly. This moral logic, that great civilizations fall because of their own internal corruption rather than simply through bad luck or external force, is one of the most enduring ideas in human historical thought. It appears in the Hebrew prophets, who attributed the fall of Israel and Judah to their unfaithfulness to their covenant with God. It appears in the Roman historians, who explained Rome's decline in terms of the moral corruption that prosperity had brought. It appears in Ibn Khaldun, the great medieval Islamic historian, who developed a sophisticated cyclical theory of civilizational rise and fall based on the concept of asabiyya, group solidarity, and its inevitable decline as civilizations become comfortable and complacent. And it appears in various forms in the thinking of every culture that has tried to understand why great things end. Plato's Atlantis is perhaps the purest expression of this idea, the most completely worked out, the most dramatically presented, the most philosophically explicit. And its persistence in human culture across 2,500 years suggests that the idea it expresses, that the greatest threat to any civilization is not its enemies, but its own moral failure, is one that every generation recognizes as speaking to its own situation. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. Chapter 6. Solon in Egypt, the chain of transmission. One of the most intriguing elements of Plato's Atlantis story is the chain of transmission he describes, the route by which the story supposedly reached him from its original Egyptian source. Plato claims that the story came from Egypt, brought back by the Athenian statesman Solon after a visit to the city of Sais in the Nile Delta, where he was told by Egyptian priests that their records preserved an account of events 9,000 years in the past. The question of whether this chain of transmission is plausible or even possible is one of the central puzzles in the study of the Atlantis story. Solon was a real historical figure, one of the most celebrated statesmen of ancient Athens, the great lawgiver who reformed the Athenian constitution in the early 6th century BCE, and whose legal and political innovations laid the groundwork for the democracy that would later flourish under Cleisthenes and Pericles. He is also known to have traveled widely, including to Egypt, in the years after his reforms, and he was renowned in antiquity as both a statesman and a poet. His visit to Egypt is mentioned by the ancient historian Herodotus. The city of Sais, where Plato says Solon received the Atlantis account, was a real Egyptian city, the capital of the 26th dynasty, which ruled Egypt in the period when Solon would have visited, and a city with an established tradition of maintaining contact with Greece. The goddess Nuith, whose great temple was at Sais, was identified by the Greeks with their own goddess Athena, patron of Athens, a coincidence that added a certain symbolic appropriateness to the idea that the priests of Sais might have preserved records of an ancient Athenian military glory. Whether the Egyptian priests actually had records going back 9,000 years is another matter entirely. Egypt's historical records go back roughly 3,000 years before Solon's time, to the early dynastic period and the first pharaohs. 9,000 years before, Solon would take us back to approximately 9,500 BCE, the end of the last ice age, when humanity was still entirely in the Paleolithic period, tens of thousands of years before the development of writing or complex civilization. There are no Egyptian records from that period because no written records existed anywhere on Earth at that time. This discrepancy has been explained in several ways. The most common skeptical explanation is simply that Plato invented the Egyptian source as a way of lending authority to his story. Egypt being, in the Greek imagination, the repository of ancient wisdom, the civilization whose priests preserved knowledge from a time so remote that no Greek record could reach it. By attributing the story to Egyptian priests, Plato placed it beyond the reach of verification and gave it an aura of antiquity that his own invention could not have had. A more charitable explanation is that Plato, or his sources, confused Egyptian years with Egyptian months, a mistake that would reduce the 9,000 years to approximately 750, which would place the Atlantean War in the Bronze Age around 1200 BCE, which is roughly consistent with the period of the Bronze Age collapse and the Thera eruption. This explanation is attractive, but speculative. There is no evidence that such a confusion actually occurred. A third explanation, favored by those who take the story more literally, is that Egypt really did preserve records of very ancient events through oral tradition or through forms of record-keeping that have not survived. That the Egyptian priests had access to a collective memory of the Bronze Age catastrophes that Solon encountered and transmitted, however transformed and embellished, to his successors. This is not impossible, but it requires a degree of memory preservation across many centuries that is difficult to demonstrate. What is clear is that Plato took some care to make his story seem authoritative. The chain of transmission he describes, Egyptian priests to Solon, to Dropides, to Critias, the elder to Critias the younger, is elaborately specific, with names and relationships carefully laid out. This specificity could indicate genuine historical transmission, or it could be a literary device designed to make the invented seem historical. Ancient authors were not always scrupulous about the distinction. The role of Egypt in the story is itself significant. In Plato's time, and for centuries before it, Egypt was the great repository of ancient wisdom in the Greek imagination. The civilization so much older than Greece that its priests could remember events that had left no trace in Greek memory. When Plato's Critias says that the Greeks are all young in their souls, whereas the Egyptians preserve the memory of 10,000 years, he is expressing a genuine Greek cultural attitude toward Egypt. The sense that Egypt was the old world and Greece was the new, that Egyptian wisdom was deeper and older and more complete than anything the Greeks had yet achieved. This attitude toward Egypt is interesting in light of what we now know about the actual relationship between Egyptian and Greek civilization. The Greeks really did borrow from Egypt, in mathematics, in astronomy, in architectural conventions, in religious ideas. The influence was real, even if the mythological accounts of Greek philosophers studying with Egyptian priests are largely legendary. And the image of Egypt as the repository of ancient wisdom, while exaggerated, was not entirely without foundation. Egypt was genuinely older, its civilization genuinely more continuous, its priestly tradition genuinely more elaborate and more concerned with the preservation of ancient knowledge than anything in the Greek world. So when Plato sets his story in the framework of Egyptian priestly memory, he is drawing on a real cultural tradition about the relationship between Greek knowledge and Egyptian antiquity. Whether the specific story he tells has a real Egyptian source, or whether he is simply clothing his own invention in Egyptian authority, the cultural logic of his choice is perfectly consistent with how Greeks of his era thought about the relationship between their own knowledge and the deeper knowledge of the East. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. Chapter 7. Modern Science and Ancient Memory. What we now know. The 20th and 21st centuries have transformed our understanding of the ancient world in ways that Plato could not have imagined, and that have genuinely illuminated the question of Atlantis, not by solving it, but by giving us a much richer picture of the real ancient world against which Plato's story can be assessed. Perhaps the most significant development has been the study of ancient climate and catastrophe. We now know, with a precision that was simply unavailable to earlier centuries, that the transition from the Ice Age to the current warm period, which took place between roughly 12,000 and 7,000 BCE, was accompanied by dramatic and rapid environmental changes. Sea levels rose by roughly 120 meters as the ice caps melted, flooding enormous areas of previously dry coastal land. Some of this coastal land had been inhabited by human communities that were displaced or destroyed by the rising seas. This means that there really were lost worlds, not in the dramatic Platonic sense of a civilization sunk overnight, but in the more gradual and more real sense of inhabited landscapes slowly submerged over centuries as the seas rose. The coastlines of the Mediterranean and the Persian Gulf and the Indian Ocean all looked very different 10,000 years ago than they do today. Areas that are now underwater were then dry land, and some of them were inhabited. The myths of floods and lost lands that appear in so many ancient cultures may preserve, in transformed and exaggerated form, memories of these real inundations. The geology of the Mediterranean has also been illuminated by modern science. We now have a detailed understanding of the seismic and volcanic activity of the region, the subduction of tectonic plates beneath the Aegean, the volcanic arc that includes Santorini and other islands, the earthquake history of the region going back millions of years. This knowledge confirms that the Mediterranean is one of the most geologically active regions on Earth, and that major earthquakes and volcanic eruptions have repeatedly disrupted the civilizations that have built themselves on its shores. The Bronze Age collapse of around 1200 BCE, which we have mentioned in connection with the possible historical basis of the Atlantis story, has been studied intensively in recent decades, and the picture that has emerged is one of extraordinary systemic complexity. Multiple civilizations collapsed within a few decades of each other. The Mycenaean Greek kingdoms, the Hittite Empire, the Ugaritic trading city, various Egyptian territories, the Cypriot Bronze Age civilization. The causes are still debated: climate change, drought, earthquakes, internal social disruption, invasions by the mysterious sea peoples, or some combination of all of these. But the scale and the speed of the collapse are clear. and they suggest a world far more vulnerable to catastrophe than the gleaming monuments of the Bronze Age might suggest. DNA studies have also transformed our understanding of ancient population movements and cultural connections in ways that are relevant to the Atlantis question. Ancient DNA extracted from the remains of Bronze Age individuals across the Mediterranean has revealed patterns of migration and cultural exchange that archaeology alone could not detect. We now know that the Bronze Age Mediterranean was a world of considerable mobility, that people, and presumably ideas and stories, moved between Egypt and Greece, and the Levant and Cyprus and Anatolia, with a frequency that makes cultural transmission of the kind Plato describes entirely plausible, even if the specific story he tells cannot be confirmed. The development of underwater archaeology, the ability to excavate and study submerged sites, has opened up the possibility of investigating Bronze Age coastal sites that were drowned by the rising sea levels of the post-glacial period. Several such sites have been found in the Mediterranean and elsewhere. Submerged villages, submerged harbors, submerged landscape features that testify to the reality of human settlement in areas now underwater. None of them is Atlantis, but they are evidence of the general phenomenon that Plato's story, in its most mythologized form, describes: the loss of inhabited lands to the sea. What all of this modern knowledge suggests is that the ancient world was a place of genuine catastrophe, of real floods and real earthquakes and real civilizational collapses that were, from the perspective of those who experienced them, as sudden and as total as anything Plato describes. The people of the Bronze Age Mediterranean lived in a world that could, and periodically did, end in ways that left surviving communities shattered and struggling to understand what had happened. The stories they told to make sense of those catastrophes, stories of divine punishment, of hubris and its consequences, of great civilizations swallowed by the earth or the sea, were not pure fantasy. They were the imagination working on real experience, transforming real suffering into meaningful narrative. In this sense, Atlantis is not so different from any other ancient myth. It is the imagination reaching back to something real and terrible that happened in the past, and making it into a story that can be understood, that can teach something, that can be passed on. Whether Plato was drawing on genuine historical memory, or inventing a philosophical allegory, or some combination of both, the impulse behind the story is entirely continuous with the impulse behind every other ancient myth about lost worlds and divine punishment and the fragility of human greatness. And that impulse, the impulse to make meaning from catastrophe, to tell stories about what has been lost, to find in the ruins of the past a lesson for the living, is perhaps the most enduringly human thing about us. We have been doing it since the first fire went out and the first person sat in the dark, trying to understand what had happened and what it meant. We are doing it still. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. Chapter 8. Atlantis in Culture. From ancient myth to modern obsession. Whatever Atlantis was or was not in historical reality, it has had an extraordinary life in the human imagination. No other myth or legend from the ancient world, with the possible exception of the Trojan War, has generated such a continuous, such a diverse, and such a creatively fertile cultural tradition. From ancient philosophy to Renaissance utopia, to 19th century occultism, to 20th century science fiction, to 21st century documentary television, Atlantis has been reinvented in every era in ways that reveal the preoccupations and anxieties of the time. The Romantic era of the late 18th and early 19th centuries was particularly hospitable to Atlantis. The Romantics loved ruins, lost worlds, and the melancholy of vanished greatness, and Atlantis offered all three in abundance. The image of a brilliant civilization sunk beneath the waves, its libraries drowned, its art dissolved, its people gone, resonated with a cultural moment that was simultaneously celebrating human progress and mourning the loss of something indefinably older and purer. William Blake, Lord Byron, and Percy Bysshe Shelley all engaged with themes of lost civilizations, though not always specifically with Atlantis. The occult tradition that flourished in the 19th and early 20th centuries found in Atlantis a perfect vehicle for its speculations. Helena Blavatsky, the founder of Theosophy, incorporated Atlantis into her elaborate cosmological system as one of the root races, the great civilizations of prehistoric humanity, each one more spiritually advanced than the last, and each one destroyed by its own moral failure. In Blavatsky's system, Atlantis was the fourth root race, destroyed for its spiritual corruption, leaving behind a few survivors who became the ancestors of the fifth root race, modern humanity. Her works were enormously influential on the occult tradition of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and her Atlantis became the Atlantis of much popular imagination. Rudolf Steiner, who began his spiritual career as a theosophist before founding his own movement of anthroposophy, elaborated on Blavatsky's Atlantis with considerable detail. Edgar Cayce, the American psychic who called himself the Sleeping Prophet and who gave thousands of medical and life readings in a trance state between the 1920s and his death in 1945, produced an enormous body of material about Atlantis, describing its technology, its spiritual practices, its destruction, and its survivors. Cayce predicted that evidence of Atlantis would be found off the coast of Bimini in the Bahamas around 1968 or 1969. The discovery of the Bimini Road in 1968 was immediately claimed by Cayce's followers as the fulfillment of this prophecy. In literature, Atlantis has inspired an enormous and diverse body of work. Jules Verne placed it on the floor of the Atlantic in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, where Captain Nemo takes his submarine guests on a silent nocturnal walk among the ruins of the sunken city. Arthur Conan Doyle wrote The Maracot Deep, a novel about scientists who discover a surviving Atlantean civilization on the ocean floor. C.S. Lewis incorporated Atlantis into his science fiction trilogy as Numenor, a great civilization of the Western Ocean destroyed by divine judgment for its hubris. J.R.R. Tolkien's Numenor, the island civilization of his Middle-earth mythology, is an explicit reworking of the Atlantis myth, complete with the westward island, the divine ancestors, the moral corruption, and the catastrophic destruction. In film and television, Atlantis has been a recurring presence. Disney made an animated feature film about it in 2001. Aquaman in the DC Comics universe is the king of an underwater Atlantis that survived its sinking and continued to thrive beneath the sea. The Stargate franchise produced a long-running series set in an Atlantis city that had traveled through space. The legend has proven endlessly adaptable, capable of being science fiction or fantasy or adventure story or philosophical allegory, depending on what the storyteller needs it to be. What all of these retellings share is a fascination with what Atlantis represents. The idea of a civilization that had everything and lost it all. This idea speaks to something very deep in human experience, the awareness of impermanence, the knowledge that the things we build are fragile, the sense that the world we have was preceded by another world, perhaps better and certainly different, that we have lost and cannot fully recover. Every culture has its golden age, a time before the fall, when things were right and good and whole, from which the present is a diminishment. Atlantis is perhaps the most vivid and most enduring expression of this universal human feeling. It is the lost paradise, given a name and a geography and a story, made specific enough to be imagined, made mysterious enough to never be fully grasped. And in that combination of the specific and the mysterious, it has proven to be one of the most generative myths in human culture. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. Chapter 9. What the story really means. Philosophy, memory, and the lost golden age. We have traveled a long way tonight, from Plato's Academy in 4th century Athens to the volcanic caldera of Santorini, from the occult speculations of the 19th century to the animated films of the 21st. We have explored the theories and the searches and the cultural reinventions. And now, in the quiet of the night, it is worth asking the deepest question. What does the Atlantis story mean? Not factually, what might it refer to, but humanly. What need does it serve? What does it tell us about ourselves that we have been telling this story and searching for its referent for 2,500 years? The philosopher Karl Popper argued that myths serve the function of articulating collective anxieties and desires in a form that can be shared, discussed, and acted upon. By this account, the Atlantis myth articulates something that human beings in every era have felt deeply. The anxiety that greatness is fragile, that the things we build can be lost, that civilizations are mortal, just as individuals are mortal, and that the sea, deep, dark, indifferent, is always waiting to swallow what pride and hubris have made vulnerable. This anxiety is not irrational. Civilizations do collapse. The Bronze Age world that Plato may have been drawing on when he wrote about Atlantis really did experience catastrophic collapse around 1200 BCE, a disruption so severe that it ended the Mycenaean and Minoan and Hittite civilizations and threw the Eastern Mediterranean into a centuries-long dark age. The Roman Empire really did fall. The Islamic Golden Age really did end, disrupted by the Mongol invasions of the 13th century. The Maya really did build extraordinary cities and then largely abandoned them. History is full of lost civilizations, real ones, and the awareness of this is one of the things that makes human beings anxious about their own. Atlantis gives this anxiety a story, and a story with a moral. The Atlanteans were not destroyed arbitrarily. They were destroyed because they had become corrupt, because they had chosen wealth over virtue, power over wisdom, the appearance of greatness over the reality of it. This moral dimension transforms the anxiety from helpless dread into something more active and more hopeful. If civilization collapses because of moral failure, then moral renewal can prevent collapse. The story of Atlantis is, in this reading, not a counsel of despair, but a call to virtue. Plato's own political thought is deeply concerned with this question. The Republic describes the ideal city. The Laws describes the best possible actual city. The Timaeus and Critias, the dialogues that contain the Atlantis story, describe what happens to a civilization when it fails to live up to its ideals. Together, these works constitute a comprehensive meditation on the conditions under which civilization can flourish and the ways in which it can fail. Atlantis is the negative example, the cautionary tale, the illustration of what happens when the divine is forgotten and the material becomes supreme. There is also something in the Atlantis story about the nature of memory itself. The story is presented as a memory, a very old memory, passed down through many generations, preserved by Egyptian priests from a time 9,000 years in the past. Whether or not this memory is accurate, the act of preserving it and transmitting it is treated as important and valuable. The story suggests that human beings have a responsibility to remember, to keep alive the accounts of what came before, however fragmentary and however uncertain, because those accounts contain wisdom that the present needs. This is, of course, exactly what we do with Atlantis. We keep the story alive, we pass it down, we debate its meaning and its origin and its referent. We make films about it and write novels about it and dig for evidence of it in the seafloor and the volcanic ash. In doing so, we are performing the act that Plato's story itself asks us to perform. We are remembering, imperfectly and imaginatively, something that matters. Whether the thing we are remembering ever literally existed is, in this sense, less important than the act of remembering itself, the act of reaching back into the past and insisting that it still has something to say to us. The ocean at night is very dark, very still, very deep. Whatever is at the bottom has been there for a long time, and it will be there for a long time after we are gone. But here, on the surface, in the thin warmth of the air, we tell each other stories about what might be down there. And in the telling, something is preserved, some quality of attention, some willingness to wonder, some refusal to let the mystery be merely a mystery and not also an invitation. That is what Atlantis is, an invitation, a door that never quite opens, a question that never quite resolves, and in remaining open, in remaining unresolved, it does something that a definitive answer never could. It keeps us wondering, it keeps us reaching, it keeps the imagination alive at the edge of sleep where the deepest questions live. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. Chapter 9. The Psychology of Lost Worlds. Why we need Atlantis. Before we reach the ocean at night and the quiet meditation that will carry us towards sleep, there is one more dimension of the Atlantis story worth exploring, perhaps the most personal and the most human dimension of all. Not the historical question of what really happened, nor the philosophical question of what Plato meant, but the psychological question of why we need this story. Why, across 2,500 years and hundreds of cultures, has the image of a lost golden civilization continued to exercise such a powerful hold on the human imagination? Every culture, in every era, has some version of a lost golden age, a time before the present when things were better, when people were wiser, when the world was more beautiful and more just and more connected to the divine. The ancient Greeks had the Age of Gold described by the poet Hesiod, a time when human beings lived like gods, without toil or grief or old age, when the earth gave its fruits freely and there was no need for agriculture or war. The Hebrew Bible has the Garden of Eden. The Norse had Asgard before Ragnarok. The Hindus have the Satya Yuga, the Age of Truth, from which the world has been declining through successive ages into the current dark age of the Kali Yuga. The Chinese have the time of the sage kings, when rulers governed with perfect virtue and the people lived in harmony with the Tao. These stories of lost golden ages are not random. They appear with such regularity across such diverse cultures that they must be expressing something deep and consistent in human experience, some fundamental aspect of how human beings relate to time, to the past, and the present. The psychologist Carl Jung would have called it an archetype, a pattern that appears in the deep structure of human psychology and expresses itself in myth and dream and story across all cultures and all periods. What psychological need does the lost golden age serve? Several, probably. But one stands out as particularly important: the need to understand why the present is imperfect. Human beings are unique among animals in their capacity to imagine how things could be different from how they are, to envision alternative realities, better worlds, states of affairs more just, or more beautiful, or more harmonious than the one they actually inhabit. This capacity is one of the sources of human creativity and human progress. But it also means that humans are perpetually aware of the gap between what is and what could be, and that gap is a source of suffering. The myth of the lost golden age addresses this suffering by giving it a narrative explanation. The world is not as it should be, not because that is simply how things are, but because something went wrong. Because we fell from an original state of perfection, because a great civilization was destroyed, because the divine gifts of an earlier age were squandered through pride or disobedience or simple bad luck. The imperfection of the present is not intrinsic to the nature of things. It is a historical contingency, a departure from an original goodness that, in principle, could be recovered. This narrative is simultaneously comforting and motivating. It is comforting because it says that the present state of affairs is not inevitable, that things could be, and once were, better. It is motivating because it suggests that recovery is possible, that by understanding what went wrong, we might be able to make it right again, to recover the lost paradise, to rebuild the sunken city. Whether the paradise can literally be recovered is almost beside the point. The narrative gives the present its proper frame, not as the final state of things, not as what reality inevitably is, but as a temporary and remediable departure from something better. Atlantis is the most fully developed version of this universal myth in Western culture. It has a name, a geography, a history, a moral explanation for its fall. It was a real civilization in the story, not merely a symbolic age. And it was destroyed not by the simple passage of time, but by a specific moral failure, by the corruption that wealth and power brought to a people who had begun in virtue. This gives the Atlantis story a directness and a specificity that more abstract myths of the Golden Age do not have. It says, here is what was lost, here is where it was, here is why it was lost, and here is what would need to change for something like it to exist again. In this sense, Atlantis is not merely a story about the past, it is a story about the future, about what human civilization could be if it recovered the virtues that the Atlanteans lost. Every utopian vision of the ideal society, from Plato's own Republic to Francis Bacon's New Atlantis, to the various socialist and communist utopias of the 19th and 20th centuries, is in some sense a response to the Atlantis story, an attempt to imagine what the recovery of the lost Golden Age would look like in practice. And perhaps this is the deepest reason why the story has never died. It is not because people literally believe in a sunken island in the Atlantic, though some do. It is because the story gives form to something that every human being feels, the sense that the world is not as it should be, that something has been lost, that a better way of living together is possible if only we could remember or recover or imagine it clearly enough. Atlantis is the name we give to that feeling, the longing for a world more beautiful and more just than the one we inhabit, located in the past, because the past is where we tend to place our ideals when the present disappoints us. As you drift towards sleep, let that longing be gentle rather than painful. The world is imperfect. Things have been lost that cannot be recovered. Civilizations have fallen and will fall again. But the longing itself, the sense that beauty and justice and wisdom are possible, that human beings are capable of more than they have so far achieved, is not nothing. It is one of the most important things about us. It is what keeps us reaching. It is what keeps us building and telling stories about what we have built and what we have lost, and imagining what we might yet become. The ocean is full, the past is deep, and we are still here, small and warm, carrying our longing with us into the dark. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. Chapter 11. The Ocean at Night. A meditation on what lies beneath. The ocean covers more than 70% of the surface of the Earth. Of that vast area, we have directly explored less than 20% of the seafloor. The deep ocean, those abyssal plains, 3 to 6 kilometers below the surface, remains the least explored environment on Earth. We know more about the surface of the Moon in some respects than we know about the deep ocean floor. In the deepest parts of the ocean, in the trenches that plunge to nearly 11 kilometers below the surface, there is no light. No sunlight has ever reached these depths. The pressure is more than 1,000 times the pressure at the ocean's surface, enough to crush most conventional vessels. The temperature is just above freezing, and yet life exists there. Strange, beautiful, alien life. Translucent fish with enormous eyes. Bioluminescent creatures that make their own light in the permanent darkness. Organisms that have evolved to thrive in conditions that would kill almost everything that lives in the sunlit world above. The deep ocean is, in a very real sense, the last great unexplored wilderness on Earth. Every expedition to the deep brings back images and specimens that science had not previously imagined. New species are discovered on virtually every deep-sea dive. The ecosystems around hydrothermal vents, those remarkable fissures in the seafloor where superheated water enriched with minerals emerges from the Earth's crust, are entirely independent of sunlight, sustained by chemosynthesis rather than photosynthesis, representing a form of life that was completely unknown to science until the late 1970s. What might be down there that we have not yet found? Not Atlantis, not a sunken city with marble columns and golden statues, which the pressure and the chemistry of the deep ocean would long since have dissolved or crushed. But what we have not found is almost certainly extraordinary, in ways we cannot fully anticipate. The history of deep-sea exploration has been a history of surprises, of the discovery that the unknown is always stranger and richer than expectation. The ancient peoples who told stories about the ocean did not know what was in it, but they were right to sense that it was full of mystery. The Homeric Greeks populated it with monsters, Scylla and Charybdis, the sirens, the sea god Proteus with his herds of seals. The Norse imagined the kraken, a vast creature so large it could be mistaken for an island. The medieval cartographers wrote here, "Be dragons at the edges of their maps, where the known world ended and the unknown began." We have replaced those dragons with scientific knowledge. We know what makes the ocean move, what lives in it, how its currents shape the climate of the continents. But the knowledge has not diminished the mystery. It has deepened it. Every answer reveals new questions. Every species discovered suggests dozens more undiscovered. The ocean keeps its secrets. Atlantis belongs to the ocean in this sense, not as a literal sunken city, but as a symbol of the way the deep past keeps its secrets from us. We know so much more about history than the ancient Greeks did. We have archaeology and genetics and paleoclimatology and a dozen other sciences that have given us access to the past in ways Plato could not have imagined. And yet the past is still mostly dark to us, still mostly unknown, still full of civilizations and events and human stories that left no record we can find. The ocean of time is as deep as the ocean of water, and what lies at its bottom is, for the most part, beyond our reach. There is something deeply restful about accepting this, about lying in the dark and letting the mystery be a mystery. Not a problem to be solved, not a puzzle to be completed, but simply the nature of things. The world is larger than our knowledge of it. The past is deeper than our records of it. The ocean is fuller than our maps of it. And all of that unknown, all of that depth, all of that darkness It is not threatening. It is just the world, being as large as it is. The waves are moving slowly tonight, in long, dark swells. The water is very cold, very blue-black, very deep. Far below the surface, in the permanent darkness of the abyssal plain, something bioluminescent is making its slow way across the seafloor, lighting its own path through the dark with the light its own body produces. It has never seen the sun. It has never needed to. It carries its light with it. We carry our stories with us in the same way. We carry Atlantis and Egypt and Rome and Mesopotamia and the Silk Road and all the rest, these accumulated images of what human beings have been and made and dreamed. They are the light we carry through the dark. They illuminate just enough to take the next step. And the mystery beyond the light is not something to fear. It is simply the next thing that is waiting to be discovered. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. And so our journey through the mystery of Atlantis comes gently to its end. We have traveled from Plato's Athens to the caldera of Santorini, from the floor of the Atlantic Ocean to the speculative libraries of 19th century occultists, from the frescoes of Acrotieri to the animated films of the 21st century. We have held the mystery up to many different lights and found that it shimmers differently depending on the angle. Historical puzzle, philosophical allegory, cultural projection, psychological symbol, invitation to wonder. We have not solved it. We were never going to solve it. The mystery of Atlantis is not the kind of mystery that resolves into a clean answer. It is the kind that deepens the more carefully you examine it, that reveals new dimensions at every angle, that returns you, in the end, to the same place you started, in the dark, at the edge of the unknown, holding a story whose full meaning is just beyond your grasp. But perhaps that is enough. Perhaps the story does not need to be solved to do its work. Perhaps the work it does, keeping us curious, keeping us humble, keeping us aware that the world is larger and older and stranger than our current understanding of it, is precisely the work that a story about a lost civilization should do. It reminds us that what we know is small compared to what we do not know. It reminds us that great things can be lost. It reminds us that the past is not simply behind us, but beneath us, layer upon layer of human experience. Most of it silent, most of it gone, most of it beyond recovery. And it reminds us of something else, that the impulse to tell stories about what we have lost and to search for it, and to imagine it back into existence through art and myth and speculation, this impulse is itself one of the most distinctively human things about us. We are the species that mourns its lost worlds. We are the species that reaches back into the dark to try to recover something it was not there to witness. We are the species that tells stories about sunken cities at the edge of sleep, long after the fire has burned down and the night has grown very quiet. Atlantis is ours, not because it is real. Whether it is or is not, we cannot say, but because we made it ours through 2,500 years of imagining it, searching for it, dreaming about it, writing about it, arguing about it. It is part of our inheritance, part of the long accumulated treasury of human stories that we pass from generation to generation, each one adding something, each one finding in the old story a new meaning that speaks to their own time. This has been Naptime Knowledge. Let your body sink fully and completely into the warmth of wherever you rest. Let your breath slow to its deepest, quietest rhythm. Let the images from tonight's story drift through your mind like things floating in deep water. The gleaming walls of Atlantis catching a light that no longer shines. The blue dome of Santorini's sky above the caldera. The dark water of the Atlantic, far from any shore. The bioluminescent creature on the abyssal plain, making its own light in the permanent dark. The ocean is patient. It keeps what it keeps. And whatever is down there, ruins or rock formations, the drowned cities of real civilizations, or the formations of geology that only look like cities in the wishful light of human longing, it will be there in the morning, and the morning after that, and the morning after that, as it has been there since, long before there were eyes to wonder about it. You are warm. You are safe. The mystery is comfortable tonight, not threatening. It is simply the world being the world, deep and dark and full of things we do not know and may never know, and beautiful for exactly that reason. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of the known world, the ocean is moving in the dark. Long swells rolling eastward across the Atlantic, carrying their cold and their salt, and their enormous weight of water toward the shores of continents that Plato never knew existed. The same ocean that he placed his legendary island in. The same water that has covered the world's secrets since before there were people to wonder about them. We are made of the same water, in a sense. The salt concentration of human blood is not far from the salt concentration of the ancient ocean. We carry the sea inside us, as we carry the stars. The iron in our blood forged in ancient supernova. The water in our cells descended from the rain that fell on the first continents. We are the universe come to know itself, briefly, in the form of creatures that can wonder about sunken cities and the nature of the divine and the meaning of what has been lost. That wondering is not a weakness. It is not a flight from reality. It is one of the most distinctively human things about us. The capacity to reach beyond the present moment, to ask what came before and what might come after, to find in the stories of the past a mirror for the challenges of the present. Plato wrote about a lost civilization because he was worried about his own. We read about it because we are worried about ours. The worry is appropriate. The story is the response. And in the story, even in its mystery and its unresolvability, there is something that helps. Think about what it means that the story has lasted this long. 2,500 years of being told and debated and reimagined and searched for. 2,500 years of every generation finding in it something that speaks to their situation, their anxieties about power and virtue, their longing for a better world, their sense that something precious has been lost that might, somehow, be recovered. Stories that last this long are not accidents. They are not merely interesting puzzles or entertaining fictions. They are vehicles for something essential, for questions that human beings cannot stop asking, for feelings that have no other adequate expression. What makes Atlantis different from other ancient myths is precisely its ambiguity. The fact that it might be history, or might be invention, or might be something in between. This ambiguity keeps the critical faculty engaged in a way that a purely legendary story does not. We cannot simply accept it as mythology and move on. We have to keep asking, was it real? Where was it? What happened? And in asking those questions, we keep returning to the deeper questions underneath them. What makes a civilization great? What destroys it? What do we owe to the future? And what have we inherited from the past? These are not questions with easy answers. They may not have answers at all in any final sense. But the asking of them, the patient, serious, humble asking, in full awareness that we may never know, is itself a form of wisdom. It is the wisdom of Socrates, who claimed to know nothing, but who spent his life asking questions that everyone else thought they had already answered. It is the wisdom that Plato, Socrates' student, was trying to teach when he told the story of Atlantis. That the most important things are often the most uncertain, and that the uncertainty is not a reason to stop asking, but a reason to ask more carefully. The ocean is patient. It has been here since long before us. It will be here long after. Whatever we build and whatever we lose, the water remains, carrying its salt and its coldness and its enormous, indifferent beauty across the face of the earth, as it has always done, as it will always do. Rest in that patience tonight. Let the ocean's indifference be a comfort rather than a cold. You are warm and safe, held by the world, surrounded by the mystery that is simply the world being larger than your understanding of it. And that is enough. That has always been enough. Good night.